안녕하세요, 여러분. Welcome back to my next video. In this video, we're gonna look at all the different ways to say thank you in Korean. There are quite a few, so 시작할까요? Alright, so here we've got this nice little table that's going to help us, and the first column is formality. So there are more than three, but three main levels of politeness are formal and polite, then polite, and then informal or casual, so the one you would talk with your friends in. And then we've got two verbs, 감사하다 and 고맙다. Now both of these translate to thank you, and they're both very, very similar, okay? But we're going to dive a little bit deeper and just see what the tiny differences are between those. So in terms of the formal and polite way of saying thank you, you can either say 감사합니다 or 고맙습니다. Now we've got verbs in Korean, and all the verbs are conjugated based on how you want to conjugate them. So you will have the politeness level conjugation and whatever you want to conjugate it into. So let's say present tense. So when you want to conjugate to present tense, you will have the choice of, okay, well, which politeness level do I want to be conjugating this verb to? It might sound daunting at the beginning, but the rules are quite, let's say, regular. So once you kind of understand the basics of that, it makes it easier. So we've got 감사합니다 and 고맙습니다 in the highest form for both of the verbs to say thank you. And so 감사합니다 and 고맙습니다, now there isn't that much difference between these two. They're kind of, in terms of like honorifics and the politeness, it's not that one is more polite than the other. And there's a lot as well in like what we think where these words came from that I'm not going to bore you with. But one of the key differences, and this is not like a spoken rule, I think this is just the usage of the language, but 감사합니다, when you are younger than the other person and you want to say thank you, you want to use 감사합니다. Or Korean people will be more likely to say 감사합니다. So when you're the younger person and you're talking to someone who's older than you, or you're talking to your boss, or you're talking to your teacher, or you are in these formal situations, then just use 감사합니다. And when you are the older person and you're talking to the younger person, you can choose 감사합니다 or 고맙습니다. It's not that you definitely have to say 감사합니다 every time you talk to an older person or you're in a formal situation where you're talking to the teacher. It's just because it's not like a spoken rule, but this is what I got from when I asked so many Koreans what they think, and this is kind of what I've been getting back. So this is the difference between these two. So my advice to you is that just use 감사합니다 between these two. So 감사합니다 and 고맙습니다. Just use 감사합니다 because you're not gonna go wrong with it. If someone says 고맙습니다 to you, that's fine. Just remember that there is 고맙습니다. But when you are in Korea and you're talking to Koreans, just stick with 감사합니다 only. Okay? Then we've got the next, well, a bit lower level. So polite, just polite is not formal. So this is more still when you talk to strangers or people you don't know, but it's not necessarily in like very formal situations. So we've got two, 감사해요 and 고마워요. Now, the difference between these two is that I believe, and especially in spoken Korean, 고마워요 is used much, much, much more often. 감사해요 is used, but it's more used in phrases, like when you want to say something like thank you so much for helping me. Yeah, 도와주셔서 감사해요. You can say it like this. It's more used with like in a sentence. But when you just want to say thank you on its own, 고마워요 is much more commonly used. So again, I would advise you here to use 고마워요 rather than 감사해요. And just remember this difference because, you know, some things that you're learning in your beginner stage, you might not necessarily understand completely, or it might be a little bit confusing for you. But when you get to the intermediate level where you are more exposed to the language and you see how it is being used, then you can come back to points like these and you'll see the difference between 감사해요 and 고마워요. So while 감사해요 is okay, I would advise you to use 고마워요 all the time, especially if you are a beginner. Okay, and the difference between, let's say I said with the first two, use 감사합니다, and the second two, use 고마워요. What's the difference now between 감사합니다 and 고마워요? So 감사합니다 is the most polite way to say thank you. And so you would use it in formal and polite situations. So you'd use it when you go to the restaurant, when you go out and about and you're meeting people for the first time or people you don't know, when you order a coffee, when you are at work and you're talking to your colleagues, should be formal and polite because especially in the office, it's you know, it should be more professional. So formal speech is better. And 고마워요 you would use, and also to like older people, 감사합니다. And 고마워요 you would use in more like less formal or informal situations. So let's say you have met someone for the first time, but they are around your age, but you're still choosing or speaking in 존댓말. You're not friends yet. So you don't have to be overly polite with them, but you still want to be polite, and that is when you would say 고마워요. So someone you're kind of like an acquaintance with, or someone who you're probably going to get close with, someone who's around your age. So that is when you would use 고마워요. Because if you sometimes using 감사합니다 in not so formal situation can make it sound a little bit unnatural. Just because you are so the way it kind of feels and works is that if you talk too formally to someone, it can kind of create this wall, this distance between you. So it's harder to get closer, if that makes sense. So depending on the vibe, depending on the feel, but someone around your age that you've met a few times and you are getting to know each other, but not getting to know each other in like dating sense, but just as a person, 고마워요 is absolutely fine. You don't want to overdo it. And lastly is the informal, which we've got 감사 and 고마워. Now, the informal language is only with your friends. So someone you dropped the honorifics with, someone you're speaking in 반말. So just casual, informal language, someone around your age, your friend. We've got two, 감사 and 고마워. 감사 is not used. So 감사, I've never heard this in speech, but it can be used in texting. So they can say 감사 감사, like twice 감사해, 감사 감사. Or just the k and s sound. That's also like a short way for texting. So in that sense, yes. But when you're speaking to them, 고마워. Okay? Never 감사, just 고마워. So in terms of your speaking, you're either using 감사합니다 or 고마워요 or 고마워. Just remember that the other ones do exist, but you probably want to be more, you probably want to get more familiar with the language before you are comfortable using the other ones. Alright, and that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, because it really supports my channel, and I will see you in the next video. 다음에 또 봐요.